Hi everyone, welcome to Fraz's Capital Podcast. Eliana, how are you?
Good. How's your week been, Mike?
Been good. It's the first week of the year. It's January 5. But wow, what a week. I feel like it's one of those moments where everything's changed and it's been building for the last few weeks with the latest updates to Claude and then shortly followed after by OpenAI's updates. And I think the awareness of what's going on is now seeping through and things are really accelerating. Like I really feel like feels like we're in this takeoff moment. And I'd say since the launch of ChatGPT, this is by far the most exciting time. There's been a huge step change. Things have just gone vertical in terms of the capabilities of these apps and what they're being used for. It's been a really interesting time, though maybe I've been a bit more tedious than usual at family functions because I've been distracted.
No, it's unbelievable the things that it can do, and this is probably one of the earlier versions of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is as bad as I'll ever be. But it's not, I've been chatting to people in the industry and in software. We do a lot of software work ourselves with Ace Ventures. And there's a bit of skepticism, but it's not even coming from me. It's coming from people like the developers that built the tools that everybody else built on. So, Carpathy, the guy that built Ruby on Rails, the person that built Railway. There's people that have said there were senior developers at Google that spent a year working on a project and it got done in less than an hour by Claude. This is years of senior development time compressing into a shorter period. It's the first time that the agents have really taken off and been able to just do all this stuff, connect to everything. There's a few missing pieces. For example, on the web development side, you still need to hook up to AWS. That stuff doesn't happen seamlessly, but there's like a God of the gaps thing where everyone's saying, "Oh, but it can't do this." It's like, "Oh, it can do that." "Oh, but it can't do this," and that gap is just getting smaller and smaller. And already you're starting to see people going like, okay, the promise of the singularity in AI takeoff was that if you've got one artificial intelligence software developer or web researcher or anything working, why wouldn't you spin up 10 or 20 or 1,000? That's now the level that people are working on, where they're trying to think of how can I set up swarms of these agents or get multiple agents working together. And it's been really phenomenal. I mean, it's been kind of one of those moments where you're like, wow, if I had this a year ago, I would have saved so much time and money. The other side, it's like, wow, we're literally at this moment right now. And it feels like almost every day there's new developments. We've been super bullish on AI and from an investment perspective, and we've used it wherever we could. Unless you've really connected into what these new agents are capable of, it's like a whole nother level that has just been unlocked. And it's been kind of promised for a very long time. Like it's kind of been there. It's just this is that moment. It's happening right now, and it's really exciting.
It's amazing, and the possibilities that you can use it for are pretty much endless. Like the ways that it can just make everyone's life in the business world
Yeah.
so much more streamlined. You can use it for whatever niche you need to make for yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's look at the projects we've done in the last few days. I'll give a couple of mine. I did a diary app. I wanted something that would prompt me via email. So the problem with diarying, like you want to keep one because when you do keep a diary, it's amazing. You've got this day to day insight and all these things you would have otherwise forgotten. It's an amazing resource to have and you never regret it. If you've kept a journal, it's extremely useful and ends up being something you end up treasuring. Something that would like prompt me via email. And so that was set up in one shot. And now you get AI, basically smart questions that draw stories out of you that you can write. So it's not like you're like, oh, I should diary. It's like 8 o'clock or whenever you set a reminder and you open an app and you're staring at a page. It's like, who's your best friend in primary school? What did you do together? And then you write a short email reply, boom, another email comes in, do it again. As it learns about you, it asks better questions and ultimately can build a memoir and get the information of your personal history and your diary out onto the page. It's just something I always wanted and now it's there.
Now you can make it.
There was another one which was investment related. So we do a lot of phone calls. You have a chart of stocks, news flying in. Maybe God forbid you like slowly, momentarily lapse your concentration and miss something. I wanted something that gives me the next 6 questions I should be asking, updated automatically. We built that now. So in a meeting, you always know the next thing to say if you get distracted.
Draw a blank
Yeah, you might find it useful as well, Eliana.
for this. And that's amazing. So with the email one, all you have to do is get the prompt, email it back, and then it files it all properly for
Yeah, store
you
that as a
in a
diary entry
database.
and then send you the follow-up question immediately. So if you want to keep working, you can just keep, and they'll all be stored and saved in your journal. I want to integrate with photos. It'll automatically send you a photo and say, what was the story behind this? We've all got like 10 to 15 years of pretty detailed photos. This is a way to, over the course of a year, get all those stories out on paper and put some meaning behind some of those photos. And I think that would be really interesting and valuable as well. This is like 3 or 4 days of work whilst working on 5 other projects, not to mention what it does for investment research and also where we should all be investing this year. There's just so much going on. It's really exciting.
Especially if it has the ability to do real time and accurate data. If you can
Yeah.
screen the internet for all of those things and give it to you whenever you ask, all these things will become automated.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Where else
I
do
asked you to do a
this?
couple of things today, and we're like, you know what, let's, as an experiment, let's try. I mean, what was your experience? You just vibe coded your first 2 apps in the last
Well,
hour.
I think it was less than that. And they're really well designed. I think that they're so interesting. So we have one of them to browse for wealth management firms. It named it Wealthwise and everything for us. But it set it up. It has the information, the details, has the capability to link it to email eventually. You can automate so much of your initial sales work using that.
Yeah, what you
So this is Wealthwise, which it just made in the last half an hour. And it's giving us an entire directory with the ability to go in.
I should add that the one you're showing has dummy data, but it is connected. The one we built is connected. And so you can see, yeah, you
It's
can click, you can
amazing.
find people's email. Like there's people that sell databases of this stuff for a fortune in our line of work. This could be done for any industry. Like this just so happens to be our industry. There's so many ideas we've been working on in terms of our investment research that we can now probably do really fast. Because there's those expert networks, which I and probably most investors, professional investors, have a love-hate relationship with because they kind of bug you all the time. They're quite expensive, 20, 30,000. They vary from the key, the old school hedge funds in the 90s and obviously long before that. They were famous for keeping like full Rolodexes of people to call in every industry. They could call and get information. And there's so much information out there. How are sales going in your company? Well, that might not be inside information, but if one company is doing really well, that bodes well for their competitors. Or how are you ordering more off this company than you were before? Those kinds of things build up this information base. We don't really play those games. We invest in very large companies where everything's public and there's less of that edge. But that was basically most of the original hedge funds operated that way and harvested profits. Then firms like GLG came along and said, we'll find those experts for you. So if you're researching a company, why don't we give you a number, like some ex-employees, some competitors, some suppliers, and then we'll work our way up until maybe we'll get you to a couple of CEOs in the industry that have left the industry or retired, and they'll organize all those calls for you. That became standard for funds, investment banks, and consultancies. Next, companies like Tegus that said, okay, well, GLG or competitors are charging, I can't remember what it was, $1,500, $2,000 an interview, but only paying the person a few $100. Why don't we offer a transcript library of all the calls to people for 20,000 US a year, and they can have those calls at cost. So for somebody like us, it's like, oh, amazing, we can organize calls for a few $100 instead of a couple thousand, and we have access to vastly more transcripts than we could ever read. Now, one thing we wanted to do is like, could you build one of these that was kind of not 20,000, but maybe, I don't know, $50 a month for the masses? Could you automate that, find the people, maybe even do it via email so it's more efficient? Like that's something we've been stewing on for a while. So we could type in, what's a good example? I don't know, Drone Shield is very topical in Australia. Get a full list of experts, email them questions, tabulate their results, make sure there's no confidential information in it, and automate our research that way. And that was something we wanted to build, but like a month ago, that would have been, I mean, we have an agency. What would we have charged for it as an agency? It could be anywhere from $50 to $100,000, possibly more. If you wanted all the features. And now it's kind of like, well, I don't think that. I think we could get a fully fledged product in weeks and spend that money on language models. What does that do to software development? What does that do to all these different companies? It's just split. It's just split all the winners and losers. And I think this is now a new phase. I'm convinced we've now passed the first phase of AI. It was like end of 2022, ChatGPT, NVIDIA GPUs skyrocketed. Now we're entering the next phase. And there are a bunch of winners over the last 2 years that I think will have to win the next phase. If you're a winner in that first period, you're going to have to win again in a different way because a lot of the things that were still hard then are trivial now. So that idea of building like a lightweight meeting agent that records all your notes and then asks questions, that was still quite challenging to do in that phase. It's now trivial. something there's multiple like very very richly valued and very successful because there's huge demand, apps that do specifically for doctors in certain scenarios, for lawyers in certain scenarios. It's now trivial for anyone to rebuild that capability and do it possibly better. I mean, the thing that surprised me is that the more advanced and technical tasks, in many ways, this is where it's most valuable because the tools have advanced to that point where they're actually beyond a lot of experts. If you are a world-class talent in a particular area, it's probably not quite there. But if you're a world-class generalist, there's a good chance the large language model is better than you in all those specific domains. And if you're there and able to pull it together, you just become 10 or 100 times more valuable, more useful. Um, and then I think in terms of software, well, if the cost of software to write is going to go down significantly, people are going to be able to do a lot more. In the last hour, you've coded two things that we do. There was one thing where we want to be aware of all the wealth managers in the country. Another app you built, which was getting news.
This is because the way that Tegus is moving so many of their capabilities to Alpha Sense, the big pitch right now is that it has AI summaries. It's easier for you to scan the news daily.
That was a
We can make it
3-minute
specific
job.
to what we want to
Yeah,
see.
login,
Yeah,
database. The next step for
exactly.
us to go, okay, this one's good, and then get it to learn more and more about you, to keep a log of your
Mhm.
preferences over time. The news you're showing will be more specific to you. We used to get Apple News updates and things like that. You barely need that now.
Oh,
Trivially, anybody here now can build this in-house by just like asking a firm like Replit to do it, which is probably a good place to start if somebody wants to play around. And it's just, or you could put something like, you could put a paywall on this and charge almost nothing and find some way, some hook, which comes to one of the other key things. I think the budgets for these things are probably similar, but the SKU's now going to go much more towards marketing. So the software cost will go down, and then a good software developer can now do vastly more. Um, but that money's still going to go somewhere. So the value of attention is now going to be significantly higher. Let's say me just in a weekend putting together a memory app, a diary app with one or two features that don't exist currently. I could then be like, okay, I want to market this. I want to put a few $100 and get somebody to click on an ad, something like that. I want to get, what would $70 be? 1,000 clicks. Yeah. Or $700, 10,000 people going to my website. That attention for demand, that's going to be the new interesting part. Do you remember when influencers were a new thing? And it was like, wow, there's influencers. And it's like, I can't
yeah.
believe that person's doing. I had a schoolmate whose like first job was like at a marketing agency and he was doing the Facebook updates for Coca-Cola. And we were like, mate, you're like, obviously you're like 18 years old. We gave him a hard time. Like, I cannot believe this is your job. You're just doing like, what's your favorite Coke bottle? Which that was pretty good content. The people that can do that are going to be so powerful now. But again, that's always been true. And it's been more and more true every year. Certainly over the last year, more products have been shipped and there's been more attention than ever. So more competition than ever for attention and more that you have to spend to get products in front of you. But now we're at the point where it's trivial for anyone to spin up a number of different agents generating hundreds or thousands of bits of content, video content, text content. You can pay $20 to get a marketer to do it on TikTok. And you could personally orchestrate hundreds of people talking about a product and put it in front of 1 million people in the next 24 hours. That's the step that's just happened. It probably happened a few weeks ago, but it's just been building. I've probably only been watching this closely for the last 2 weeks because I didn't quite realize how big of a shift it has been and how much that's going to change anything. But now the onus is on all of us to make use of these tools. It's super exciting. It's kind of disorientating, but it is exciting, and it's going to significantly invest where we spend money over the next year. It's going to completely change our day-to-day, like I'm talking about us personally in the fund, like what we're spending our time on, what we're working on. Um, it's an interesting time. You realize like nobody knows what you're talking about. Like 99.99% people are not aware of what's going on right now over the last few weeks. The shift that's happened, or the very senior developers who are now saying, I don't write code anymore. A lot of these people were skeptical up until a few weeks ago, and they were right. The tools were not there. I know because we've been using them the whole time. Like we started like copy pasting and like with ChatGPT to build some of our first systems, and that seems so archaic now. And it's just the capabilities we've got are higher. There's people that are like on Polymarket has a good API, a trading API, and it seems to be very unregulated at the moment. So you see these big bets that like the United States is going to invade Venezuela, and then it happens. That's like clearly inside information, but I don't think people realize there's obviously really strict equity laws, but in some markets there's no insider trading laws. If you're in a global energy market and you know the price of oil in one port and another port, there's nobody that says you can't use that information. And in fact, it was companies like Glencore that had agents in all these ports that knew the prices everywhere that created that global spot market. Now, you could argue that was inside information and kind of was. But in some of these new markets, which is probably why Polymarket has taken off so much, people who are not coders are spinning up market makers that are turning a few $100 into $50,000 and things like that. Now, I'm sure some of it's just people lying on the internet, but some of it's probably true as well. And yeah, it's just, there's so many different domains that just over the last week that have just changed dramatically. And it's pretty interesting time. It's almost hard to know where to look because there's so much happening at once.
And it's so exciting the fact that this right here can whip up an app or a website and use actual data and information and make it exactly how you want. Don't you think that in the next couple months or a year or so, they're going to have so many more capabilities like this? Imagine something that can build an entire spreadsheet for you using real time data just because you asked
Yeah, I
it
mean
to.
that's there like already. Like there was big acquisition, but but again, I think that's why it's changed. It's like the split. There used to be a big premium for somebody who built a great use of AI, but that like copying any app is now. I mean, I don't want to overdo it, but I also don't want to underdo it either. It's becoming more and more accessible for us to build complex technology. Even if you're a good developer, it could have taken some time to pull together those apps that we just talked about that we did in the last 24 hours. Um, they're like non-trivial, like getting real-time transcription, getting it saved, coming up with questions, hooking up email, encrypting the back end. That stuff wasn't straightforward even for somebody who knew what they're doing. That was probably weeks, if not a month or two. And it's just being done by people who are just asking it the right questions.
Is anyone going to have a job in the future?
I don't know, but there is huge opportunity. If I'll give you some examples.
Ask for
Everyone's buying up domains now because let's say we like one of these apps, we're going to buy a domain. I've probably bought 5 domains in the last few days. Replit is a company that's been quietly doing extremely well. It was a browser development environment, well situated for AI. But now the reason I like it is because you can just deploy everything immediately through the app. But it was very buggy. It was very difficult and buggy to use like 6 months ago. Like you couldn't really rely on it. It kind of worked, but you still needed to know a lot. You still need to like spend a lot of time with a separate large language model. Now all of that's inbuilt. Like the database will hook up, the authentication will hook up. You can copy an API key from another website and just using that simple process, which it takes you through. You're not even putting that into a file. So even for somebody who didn't know how to code, that's one of the places where people trip up because that key you get on that website is basically if you publish that anywhere on your website other than a particular part that's hidden, that's going to be visible to everybody. That's something the beginner coder or somebody from a different industry like ourselves might make a mistake like that. Well, you're not going to make that mistake anymore. The gaps that are missing, for example, I want to shift it from Replit's inbuilt databases that are all hooked up to AWS or Railway. That step is not quite there yet, but it will be there this year. It might be there in a week or two for all we know. And then even then it'll be like, okay, deploy to AWS, like one button click. Don't write a single code. Oh, the other thing that's interesting about this, you don't touch the files. In the prior 2 to 3 year regime of AI, you're still spending a lot of time in the files. You're copy pasting, going through error logs, trying to figure out what the issue is and diagnose it. ChatGPT has a slightly different tool to Claude. It seems to work for a lot longer. You might give it a task or work for 5 hours, but it's going to ingest an extremely large code base, and that's new and exciting. And it's I mean there's people there's like extremely experienced software developers that have built some of these tools that we're talking about. They're saying they don't write code anymore. In the last few weeks they haven't written any code. It's all been done through that. And very fast it will happen that that is the right way to do it. To go into the files is actually more dangerous. You're more likely to make a mistake than to use the best practice of these large language models, which are now very well adapted, very well trained on all kinds of code bases, and distill all the experience, not just of one person who might be a genius, but all the geniuses and all the talents that have written public code, distill that and drawing from that wisdom to get things done. Um,
like you're saying, with efficiency, and it's going to eliminate human error in coding and all the things that trip you up and take so much longer. I feel like the speed is just so impressive, like the way that it can do
yeah,
it and how quickly it can.
Definitely. There's going to be big winners and losers. My personal view, this is a prediction that may or may not come true. And I've certainly spoken to people over the last week that disagree, but I think interactive AI developing environments are going to lose. Now I
Mhm.
think you're just going to use the terminal. All the coding projects obviously have to use the terminals. If you're a software developer, you love it, but most people don't. The terminal is now the most valuable and exciting part of the computer. To somebody that's not a coder, that's new. We used to pay $1,000 for an advanced development environment called JetBrains. I reckon everyone's going to be cancelling their JetBrains subscriptions. Just doesn't make sense. You've got all these people that were winning. A bunch of old companies were winners in AI development. Some companies focused on the prior regime of AI. Their markets are now up for grabs again, the same way that a bunch of markets were up for grabs 2, 3 years ago. It's a new phase now, and it's not clear where it goes. I don't think it's time for pessimism. I think it's more a case of you have to engage. Like you have to try and understand what's happening and how you can use that, how you can be vastly more effective, and how you can think about it's no longer about how can I use AI, how can I get a swarm of AI agents doing things for me? How can I iterate on those? How can I get some kind of recursive AI is helping me, whether it's marketing leads, whether it's pulling information from the internet, whether it's all kind of knowledge work basically. And yeah, there will be some massive winners. Like there will be a lot more money. There'll be huge sums spent and invested in parts of this market. The ability for a good product to get in front of a lot of people. The reality is 99.9% of people are never going to use these tools, no matter how good they are. They're not gonna like, oh, I need an app. I'm just gonna spin one up on my phone, which we can do. Well, the other interesting thing is you can use your phone now to build these apps. They're extremely good. And because you're not opening a file and switching between a terminal, a text editor, and whatever you're looking at, it might be an app or like a website where you're making changes in one, deploying it and checking. Because that whole process, you don't need to do that anymore. It really works well on an app or a laptop. That makes the whole thing a lot more fun. The fact that all your changes kind of work times out of 10 the first time means you get like a real kick when something works. And that feedback loop is just so much tighter. Whereas in the past, you might spend a day struggling to get something working. Obviously, I'm like significantly less experienced as a programmer than most, so it might take me a long time. And then you get that thrill of, oh my God, it worked, thank God. That is now, that feedback loop is almost immediate. Like you saw it as we just as a test built those two apps in the 15 minutes before we sat down to do this call. It's fun. It's really fun. And
It really is. I can tailor it, you can keep going with it. It's so specific to whatever you want and need. It really is so incredible. But what other areas? Because I understand the idea that probably not everyone is going to use that, but what areas do you think are going to be the losers in this situation? They're going to be made redundant.
it's hard. I mean, let's zoom in on the investment side because that's also super interesting. Winners and losers. I mean, software, the first day of this trading year, it's like software down 4%, semis up 4%, 8% differential within the technology sector. So already like software down, semis up. Both those sides probably still work. The demand for compute is nuts. I mean, it takes a number of NVIDIA GPUs to do what we do. And I basically have 3 to 4 agents now in the background on all my projects. In between meetings or looking at something, I'll give them all an update and press go, and they'll spend 5 minutes to 30 minutes. Somewhere on this planet, for each of those requests, GPUs are spinning up using power, energy, water, memory, most likely NVIDIA GPUs. The demand for that, I reckon the numbers that are going to come out after the last few weeks are going to be a huge step up. So that's a prediction. We don't know the answer. I could be wrong, but I reckon the usage is going to surprise massively on the upside in this new phase. So those winners are the same. They're the winners before in the first phase of AI. They're winners in the second phase. Now the software side is kind of interesting. I was tweeting about it. Somebody asked me about GitLab. I feel like enterprise layers are under pressure. When did this stuff really take off? Probably 15 years, maybe. 15 to 8 years, there was a lot of greenfield opportunities in SaaS and very valuable SaaS. And they got users in, they got database, they increased price. But now like the amount that people might spend on something like a Salesforce is actually quite meaningful. And there's been this debate over the last year, will people just switch off and build their own CRMs? That's significantly more likely now. If you're paying millions of dollars to a software company, there's a good chance people want to reduce that. I guess other losers are probably software developers. If a senior engineer can now spin up hundreds of instances, they're all their code's checked. They can put these through. You could commit some code do a request to make some code and get every single LLM to review it 3 times and review each other's work and just build all these layers of security and then give you an extremely detailed summary of all the issues, design, and technical decisions. Your senior person will be getting these agents to do all this work at once. So the number of people doing that are probably down. Like there's very little reason for a software company to hire a lot of people. One good developer is probably worth many more. Even the largest legacy code bases, maybe they haven't succumbed yet, but they will. And then the need for software developers is going to go down. Now, why is that relevant to the software industry? Every software developer has multiple subscriptions, huge amount of subscriptions. Every salesperson has subscriptions. Every seat has subscriptions to Office, subscriptions to a CRM if it's relevant. If they're a software developer, it'll be some Git management tool. It'll be probably 20, 30, 40, maybe even more different things. I think of all the things we subscribe to. You can barely count them. We should get an AI to go through our emails and summarize everything we're paying for and see which ones we can cut.
Make sure to cancel them.
Yeah, I cancelled auto cancelled our
Use it
note
for
take.
everything.
And we're paying like $60 a month for the team, something like that. Yeah, it's a lot. It's like $1,000 a year gone. So if people are hiring less, there's less seats, and a lot of these things are seat-based. Compute might be going up, but seat-based pricing is probably going down. Even if this theory that we just entered this new phase is incorrect and it's years in the future, that's probably why these companies are under pressure. But if I look at the numbers, they still look pretty solid. A lot of them like mid-teens growth. Most of them have been cutting costs. The question is whether they go further. I think software is mixed. I think like it is on average probably a loser here, just because the number of people subscribing to different software tools is probably going down. Why? And there was an idea, maybe you spin up 100 agents, they have 100 Salesforce subscriptions. That's not going to happen. You're not going to be paying multiple times for access to your data. If you are, you're going to move it somewhere else where you don't have to do that. And that's now a trivial task, which might have been quite a serious undertaking a few weeks ago. Also remember, most of the world's not going to change. Still going to go to Woolies and Coles. There's no... If anything, like a lot of the physical world goes up, like demand for certain resources is probably higher now than ever. The value from turning silicon into GPUs is higher than ever. There's a lot of companies and firms on that chain which are winners. There's a lot of things that you do in your day-to-day that have nothing to do with software, nothing to do with knowledge work. They're in the physical space. That stuff doesn't really affect. Maybe, at the margin, sure, maybe there's tools for plumbers and electricians that make their jobs easier. But most of your day-to-day is going to be very similar. But in these knowledge industries, it's an absolute tidal wave. And there's so much opportunity. It's a different set of winners to the first phase of AI, for sure, on the software side. Platforms that have users like Google and the advertising platforms are going to do well. There's going to be more budget for this. More people will put that initial 50 to 100K investment in advertising. The competition for keywords is going to massively go up. There might have only been 5 good diary apps. Now there's going to be a ton. A lot of people will go and say, I'm going to spend 20, 30 bucks. I'm going to build a competitor to your app. And if I can get a few percent market share, that could be 100 grand. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That's a risk worth taking. And the risk now is minutes of time, less than a day. I think where I think the software side, and obviously this is really important for us, is you're gonna have to be more holistic. Software developers are gonna have to build really good products and demonstrate value beyond technical experience. That was the hardest part. Not just your technical experience. There's actually very few people that can keep an enormous code base in their head. That's a huge amount of context. Often it seems like there's maybe even one person that has been there the whole time, really knows how it all works. They can do that. But now these LLMs are good enough to ingest these code bases. And I'm not saying they've gone all the way, but they were there and now they're here. And so it's that go to the gaps idea. That gap is shrinking. It will shrink significantly over this year. If you're in the software industry, you need to be value add. You need to be improving your product. You need to be switched on. You need to be using these LLMs to figure out the best things. I remember speaking to a guy that somehow made money out of drop shipping. The thing that struck me was he was like, well, we had guys that full-time people monitoring our competitors. And if an ad came out that had good copy, that was getting traffic, within hours, we would have an ad up with that copy. Like they would hire full-time people to monitor all their competitors and the entire ad market for different words and immediately copy. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Now I understand the level of intensity it would take to compete in something as highly competitive as drop shipping. I think that level of competition intensity is going to enter other parts of technology and the economy. For example, if you want to advertise a protein powder, you could now create a web app that scans the internet and gives you a summary of everything that's changed and what's going viral in your space for certain keywords and logs it. And with a button says, do you want to update all your ad copy? Do you want to spin up 100 different examples of this? Do you want to put $10 behind each one? And that's quite a complicated thing to build. And that's something that is now in a lot of people's hands. So the competition is going to go up and the compute is going to go up because all these things require GPUs churning around. And the competition for ads, the competition in every sector is going to go up. But there's definitely a moment now where that competition isn't quite there because so few people are aware of this, and the people that are aware of what's happened in the last few weeks, a lot of them are still skeptical. Yeah, it's really I switch between being super excited and then kind of like, where does this end? Like, how does this end? What happens? It's a very interesting time.
It is really exciting. It's probably going to be one of those things where you wake up and you have no idea how you did business before you had it.
Yeah.
Make all of your own personalized tools.
Yeah, we're so lucky to be in this time. And then the health impacts, like the ability to do health research. Like there's a member of my family that had an accident, had a head injury, and had some hearing issues in one ear. And had some surgery in a public system, and it was just a disaster. They wanted to operate to see what happened. And then the surgeon got a different surgeon that didn't even know that this was concussion related, did an actual operation that took significant recovery on his ear. And then it was inconclusive, just didn't find anything and wasn't aware that they were supposed to be looking for concussion. There's some level of malpractice there, I'm sure. But I was like,
Oh gosh.
okay, let's whack this into these LLMs. And then they was like, okay, these are the things they could do. These are the non-invasive scans you could do. That whole workflow was not followed with him. So you could then take that, and it's not being your own doctor. You're definitely going to get a ton of resistance from doctors if you go in with ChatGPT. But the reality is that was a much better path. And that's now in everybody's hands. I guess it was without this recent step change, it probably was inevitable that would get better and better. But it's pretty interesting. Yeah, like I said, you don't know where to look, whether it's financial market making, whether it's investment research, whether it's the impact on health, whether it's trying to prompt yourself daily on email to get information out of your head onto paper and build a memoir or a journal. By the way, I think we'll offer people that subscribe for a year a printed version of their journal for free. But that also shows it'll come down to a good marketing hook. Can you connect it to the physical world, to people's emotions? Like if there's a million more apps, or there's like 100 times as many apps, it's going to be the ones that actually have some emotional resonance that are going to do well. And if it has that, you're less likely to be undiscovered. Think about what happened in Instagram and TikTok. Back in the day, if you wanted to be a musician, you had to find an agent, somebody to sign and market you. Like over the last 10, 15 years, that's changed. It's like if you put out a good song, there's a good chance, and you're consistently putting content and interacting with fans, you're going to be discovered. If people like it, they're going to find you somehow if you keep putting that stuff out. People are only signed with big record companies when they already have that support. It's kind of like that now. When you think about how this affects marketing and discovery for businesses, if you're switched on, you will be discovered if you're doing something really good, if you're improving people's lives and you're giving them emotional impact. We're all going to get the benefit of that because there'll be more useful things out there. I'm not sure where to look. Maybe we'll just wrap up there.
Really exciting times. I feel like there's so much that this could be used for just in the next year.
Yeah, it's on all of us now. We've given these magic abilities a few years ago, and now we've got a whole set of magical powers. It's really to use as best we can. So let's all think about ways we can do that.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me back.
Good to chat. If anyone wants to contact us, I'm Michael Frazes. Hi everyone, welcome to Frazes Capital Podcast. FrazesCapitalPartners.com. Please reach out and get in touch if you want to have a chat. Thank you.